Save the Semantics, episode 342. It is September 23rd, 2025. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Tuesday evening, pretty shortly after my recording of yesterday. But today in particular, I have a real hankering to talk about basketball. Just kind of looked at the schedule, realized that we're a week out from preseason basketball. Again, not real regular season action, but still basketball, which is huge. And so I just wanted to talk about it. I want to give a little, I think earlier, prior to the trade deadline / off season, I think maybe shortly after the finals and like the draft and everything like that, I talked about my intriguing teams and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I don't think I really delved too much into that afterwards. So maybe it's a little early to do like a preview of sorts, but I just, I'm probably going to just revisit these conversations as the weeks go on. But I'm just having a real craving for it. It's right around the corner. Real basketball is in a month. So it's gonna come pretty quickly. And yeah, might as well. If I'm feeling it, why not just talk about some stuff, and I can get into like the real stuff more as the weeks come along. Talk about, more Warriors stuff. Like, honestly, I don't even really want to talk about the Warriors right now because of the Kuminga situation. Like, until that shit is settled, like, I'm just going to hold off on that, right? There has not been any significant roster changes since their, season came to an end. So I'm hesitant to even like delve into that. So until like the full roster, training camp, everything like that is completely solidified, I don't even really want to get into it. So I thought what I like to talk about the Eastern Conference for some reason. And I've given this reason why a number of times. One is because it's not in direct competition with the Warriors, so I don't have to stress about, like, I don't really have to care too much about, standings wise or whatever. So it's not like, it's like if I'm cheering, I don't know, if I like a team on the Western Conference, which is not a lot, I don't have to like be like, it was just whatever, you know what I mean? There's no like stress involved. And two, it's just like, I don't know, I think it just makes for interesting conversation. I think, listen, it's very obvious that the Eastern Conference is incredibly weak in comparison to the Western Conference. Like we that's a conversation that's been ongoing forever now, but I do think that there are still some interesting teams to kind of look at. And so just like off the top of my head, I'll just kind of name some teams and talk about them, give my kind of brief little overview and brief thoughts on those teams and, what potential they might have to make a playoff run or even like a finals run, right? Because East is pretty wide open, right? I think it makes for it's a lot more intriguing to look at, honestly, as opposed to, because it feels like it's just like an open, like it feels so open, right? So it could be like a number. It's like this team is in the finals. It's like, it's kind of funny, but it's also fun too. I actually think the Western Conference, the way it's structured right now, and then also taking consideration to the now Fred VanVleet injury, I actually think now it's a lot more, I don't know, it's a lot more easier to kind of see what the best teams are. It's OKC and Denver. Like those are the best teams right now, right? So, and then outside of that, you got a collection of, you got the Timberwolves who are still good. And then who else? Who knows who else? But I think in terms of like, these are like the clear best teams. It's like, yeah, it's OKC and Denver, I would think. Eastern Conference is where it's kind of a lot more interesting in my eyes and less stressful. You know what I mean? So you don't have to like worry about the mishmash. Is like, oh, is San Antonio gonna move up? Is Portland gonna move up? Like you don't have to do all this, right? We'll get to that point later, right? But for now, I think Eastern Conference feels less it feels like less stressful coming as a Warriors fan and also just as like a league wide fan. It's just more like what is going to be the team. So like I do think the better teams in the East right now are the Cavs and the Knicks, right? Who they've been able to retain the same roster as they've had last year. They've had they still have good teams, like even though the Cavs had a second round exit against the Pacers. Like I think they'll still be like a good regular season team. I'm fairly certain of that. Obviously we'll see how their playoff performance is able to kind of rise up to is we'll see whether it'll rise up to that occasion or not. But yeah, I think those two are like, but I don't even know if you can even solidify them as like the best, right? Maybe the Cavs, I don't know. But let's talk about some of the other teams kind of in the mix that feel worth kind of discussing. There's a lot. I think there's actually a chunk of teams. So I don't know if I'll get into all of them today, but I'll talk about some of the ones that sort of come to mind as to like whether are they going to be anything at all, or is it just going to be, I don't know, is it just going to be another, I don't know, maybe a fluke season? I have no idea. Let's start off with the Sixers. So last year when they acquired Paul George, it felt like a slam dunk, right, for them. It felt like a pretty surefire way of, at least solidifying them in playoff positioning. And then obviously all of the injuries came. But even before that, they had an absolutely disastrous start to the regular season where they were like 3-15 or something crazy like that. They were a bad team. And then they were a bad team for the rest of the year when they decided to pivot into tanking and stuff, right? There's been some reports of Embiid and how he's been able to handle his injury and stuff like that, which is a positive sign. Absolutely. I do think it's really, listen, I totally get the criticism for Embiid, but I do think, kind of following up the conversation I had about injuries last time I recorded, I do think that there is kind of this like, I don't know, there's almost this like unsurmountable like amount of blame that's put on Embiid when a lot of it are things that he can't control, right? Like, sure, he can control his body weight and all that kind of stuff, but injury history, like sometimes you just have a freak, like injury. I get it for Embiid, it's a lot more of like his size and his just how big of a person he is, but I do think there is just an unfair amount of criticism that is levied toward Embiid. He's still like an incredible player, and I don't necessarily think that the failures of the franchise since he's been their centerpiece has been entirely his fault. Like, you can pinpoint that to a lot of other factors, right? So I don't know. I think I do hope he's able to play. Like, I totally get he's had some moments, like, yeah, I get it. During the Knicks series in 24, he had some real questionable moments. Like, I absolutely get that. I think outside of that, he's still like an incredible player and probably one of the better players if he's even remotely healthy, right? So it all hinges on him, right? It all hinges on him, which is what makes it kind of interesting for me. I think that the direction that they're kind of going in terms of, pivoting more towards like a younger guard with like Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and then now VJ Edgecombe, like, is that kind of trio of guards or whatever, how is that going to fit into building towards a potential, like, maybe a successful team? Because I think they could be a decent team. They were they just started off so poorly. Like, it was almost to a point where they dug themselves too deep to the point where they just couldn't do anything about it. And then obviously like all the other injuries hit with Paul George, his injury just like hitting super early in the season. And then of course Embiid. So they're going to be an interesting case study as to like how they're going to be able to manage both having, this sort of younger core. Is it going to be like, I still think it is Embiid's team, but I have heard like conversations and stuff about like how maybe like Maxi is going to be more of like the center point now that, he's become a better player and how he's sort of like elevated his position. Once like, and, Jared McCain, like how is he going to fit into the system in his second year? Is VJ Edgecombe going to have like a really strong initial impact? I don't know. But they have like good players still. I don't know, like, is Paul George quote unquote washed? Is he not going to be at the peak of his, of his prowess? I don't know. I think it was a pretty significant decline going from the Clippers to his first year with the Sixers. And maybe you could point that to injury, but it just could be like an age thing, right? He is getting older, late to mid 30s. Like, I think that just might be an inevitable kind of thing. So he still might be a decent like impact player, but I don't know if he's going to be this like crazy contributor. I think the success of that team is going to kind of hinge on the younger group, right? And how far they're able to kind of, elevate the team, because I do think that there is potential, right, with those players. I didn't I am not at all a draft expert. I did not watch really any college basketball until March Madness and everything, but I heard quite a bit about like VJ Edgecombe, right? Amongst like the Cooper Flags, Ace Baileys, and Dylan Harpers of this past draft, and so he was selected number 3, so he is clearly kind of up there in the upper echelon of draft prospects, and I think that if he's good enough, like he could be just like a straight up contributor to this team. So I think it will be interesting to see how that sort of works out, and whether those younger players are going to be able to supplement and, I don't know, sustain some type of success. Because like last year was just basically kind of a lost season. I mean, you could argue they got Edgecombe, so that was maybe the prize at the end of this pretty disastrous season. But they still have Embiid. Like, even though it is very unlikely to be that he is going to be at the same level as he was, during his like MVP season, I still think he's going to be a good player. They're just going to have to find a way to not put so much on him, right? I just don't. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. Maybe he made like a really great recovery and he's able to play up to that same level, but I kind of have questions about that. I have some doubts about that, right? So the Sixers are interesting in that way. They're not the most interesting necessarily, but I do think the fact that they still have Embiid, and now they have some of the newer players, like younger players. It's like, okay, I don't know. They're just such a wild card. I think they're the most like question mark team out of every team that I think is interesting in the Eastern Conference. The next team, I'll talk a little bit about Orlando. I think there's a lot of expectations for them this upcoming season after getting Desmond Bane. I think he'll be really good for them. It feels like they have a pretty solid, core with Suggs and Banchero, Wagner, and then, now Desmond Bane. So I think they'll be a good team. Absolutely. They'll definitely make a leap. I mean, they kind of have to. Like, I mean, if you look, just again, looking at the Eastern Conference, like somebody has to be good. So they'll definitely be like a good team. My sort of thing is, especially in the case of Banchero, who has shown to be I think he's going to be like, he is their best player, right? How much of that load is he going to be able to carry offensively? Of course, now with Bane, there's less of that load, but there are going to be moments where I'm sure you're going to have to find ways to rely on him to score in key moments and those kinds of things, right? Because like he has the physical attributes and the tools and the skill to be able to be like a great player. I think he is going to be really good. He already is really good, but you know what I mean? Like, I think is he going to continue to kind of elevate his game? It's like, how is that going to work out? Is he going to be kind of the clear number one option? I do believe that is going to be the case, but yeah, I think just kind of continuing to see how he like evolves as a player will be really interesting to see. I think I don't think he's underrated within like NBA circles, but I do think he's underrated in just like, I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are really talking about him necessarily right now. But I do think I think he'll get more praise, I think, this season because the Magic are going to have more success, right? And hopefully they don't have to deal with injuries as well. In their case, right? I mean, they had like Suggs go out, Banchero went out, like Wagner went, like all three of their better players went out. Like I don't think like their core was really able to like play any significant minutes, right? So, and did Suggs play in the playoffs? I don't think he did. So they were missing some real. I mean, they had Corey Joseph starting for them in the playoffs, right? So I think they're going to be in a better position. They're going to be much better. That is for sure. Next team, another team that I think, another team that made a pretty significant acquisition and will most likely make a leap, but they're also the Hawks. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the Atlanta Hawks. They are always like at least for the last like few years since they made their Eastern Conference Finals run, I have been like, they might be pretty damn good. And then it just never comes to fruition. Last year, I was intrigued. I was like, I like what Risa is showing. I really like Jalen Johnson. He just seems like a really good player. And then Jalen Johnson went out. They went back to where they usually are, which is in the play-in, right? So I think that, Porzingis, it's kind of a bit of a, they'll be good. They do have good backup support with Okongwu. But I do think that his injuries history is a bit of a question mark as well, Porzingis is. So I would like to kind of, they're very, I want to see like Trae Young do well because I actually like Trae Young. I think people like to shit on him for some reason. I get it. Like maybe he was a little annoying. I think maybe some of the New York series in particular probably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, but he has like a flair for the game. He's a fun player to watch. He's a great playmaker. And like when he hits those like shots, I remember last year, I think it was against the Jazz when he hit like the half court buzzer beater to win that game. Like he has like some really fun moments. And he's a fun player to watch. I get like all the defensive issues. I totally get that. But as a point guard and as like a score kind of first playmake, slash playmake point guard, he's really fun to watch. So I want to see him be able to compete at that same level as he did in 21. I think it would just be interesting to see how he's able to handle that. And I don't know. I like the Hawks. I like the composition they have. I like their players. I like Dyson Daniels, again, Jalen Johnson. They also got Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think they added some like good pieces. Like they had probably, like out of all the other teams, like post finals, they probably had the best offseason, I would say, right? So yeah, I think they're in a good position. It's just like a matter of just like, can they put it together? Can they put it together? Can they make it work? Another team, Detroit. So I felt pretty good. I think last year, did I mention, I don't know if I mentioned this last year, but I did feel pretty good about, thinking that they were going to make a leap last year, considering the awful. I mean, there was really no other way than up, really, but a really significant, like a 30 game jump in winning, like an all-time record for them from a year-to-year basis, which is still really admirable. I think they're gonna maintain this year, maybe be a little closer to 500. I do think that there might be some growing pains, especially with adding back Jaden Ivey. They also lost like two veteran players and Dennis Schroeder. He played a pretty significant part during their playoff series against the Knicks. Malik Beasley, that whole situation, right? He's most likely not going to be back on the team. So like two vet pieces there that they're not going to have. Tim Hardaway Jr. too. I think he went to, I forgot which team he went to, but now they got like, now it's going to be like, okay, now we have to kind of rely on the younger guys. They still have Tobias Harris, but like, come on, you can't have him carry the load. So I think there's going to be some growing pains. Like, I think there's going to be some adjustment with, adding Jaden Ivey back into the lineup, right? As their two guard. He's going to be good, I think. I think he'll be good for them, but I do think there's going to be maybe a little bit of awkwardness there. And, I mean, there's just going to be more reliance on the younger players. Ausar Thompson is good, but, I think the offensive deficiencies are pretty clear. I think Amen, his twin, is a little better, right? As you kind of saw during the Warriors series last playoffs. He could still be a really good player, but like, there's moments like he has his moments, like the athleticism and everything like that is all there, but he can't shoot free throws. He can't shoot threes. Like all the offensive stuff is kind of, is not great, right? So there's probably going to be more expectation on him to be a contributor on that side of the ball. So there's going to be, I really do think the idea of growing pains is going to be the thing for the Pistons. The fact that they can't rely on these vets anymore because they're no longer with the team. And you really have to kind of see how it goes. Like I feel pretty confident that Cade's going to be that guy. He's shown that he's their best player. It's just a matter of like all the other players, Duren and Thompson, Ivy. How well are those other younger players going to be able to adjust to expectations, right? I think they're going to be like around 500 this year. So that's kind of where my placement of them is going to be. I think they'll be decent. I think they'll be solid, but I think I don't know if they're going to rise to. I don't know. People might have high expectations. I don't think it's fair to put high expectations on them because last year was such a significant jump that I do think that there's going to be some adjustments that will need to take place. The other team, and then I'll talk, maybe I'll get into, I don't know, maybe another time when I record, I'll get into other teams that are intriguing, but it's more like obvious, like what to expect from them. The Raptors are, outside of, I don't know if I would consider them a wild card because it feels very clear that they're trying to win this year. Getting Ingram and everything like that, getting Colin Murray Boyles from the draft, right? Like they're going to try to like plug and play him from the get-go. So I think in terms of like a vision of like a direction they're going for, they have a bit more of a direction as opposed to like the Sixers, where the Sixers are like, we still have Embiid, but like we also have this younger core that we're kind of building, I guess. Like with the Raptors, it's like, yeah, we got like veteran players in Ingram and Pirtle that are gonna, we're gonna try to win somehow. You know what I mean? I think the makeup of their team is very interesting to me. They have like a lot of pretty solid players, but in terms of how well they like fit together, I don't know. That's going to be kind of like, it is like I've been seeing like for a while now how RJ Barrett is gonna. There's like trade rumors about RJ Barrett and everything like that. He always seems to be kind of like the one out, because although he is very capable on offense, like he is like a good player, I think like the defensive maybe identity that they're trying to look for, he doesn't fit into, because he's not been a historically good defensive player. And so like other players that they have, including like Ochai Abaji and Jacoby Walter, who was a pickup from last year in the draft, like they fit more into kind of their defensive scheme as opposed to Barrett. So he kind of feels like maybe the odd man out, which is why maybe the Raptors like are like shopping him and that kind of thing. I'm curious, like how well, are they going to be able to like adjust and create a type of defensive identity? Because like Scotty Barnes is like a really good defensive player, right? But is it maybe a lot to expect to put that load on him for defensive assignments on like everything? Like they do have like, it seems like they have like other good defensive players. I think maybe like Colin Murray Boyles also fits into that identity as well. But I do feel like it's like trying to find, I think for the Raptors, the big thing will be trying to find some kind of identity, right? Last year, it was like, okay, they're going to tank. Like I remember watching the most ridiculous game I remember watching last year from them. And this is me being an absolute sicko, because I'm watching Raptors Magic in freaking like March. The Magic are trying to win. They're trying to hold on to their playoff seeding because they've completely just like they just were sliding. They just kept sliding, and then and Toronto is like clearly trying to tank at like the 1 or 2 minute mark. The coach, Darko Rajakovic, he pulls like all the starters. It's a close. It's like a 2-point game, and there's like 1 or 2 minutes left, and they put in their kind of bench players. They're trying to lose. They are trying to lose. It was the most obvious and blatant attempt at tanking that I've seen in a long time. I mean, of course, you could probably pinpoint other examples, but that was the one that I remember from last season. And then they're clearly trying to lose. They're having their second, they're having their rookies try to play it out. They throw the ball. They're down by 2, I think, at like 10 seconds left or something. And then they throw it in. Jacoby Walter is at like the top of the key. He just chucks a 3 and then just nails it. And then like the coach goes crazy. I'm like that's not what you intended. Like that was not the goal, right? Like that was like a failed like tanking like win basically, right? It was so funny, but it was just like I don't know. I don't know what my point is, but it was just like one of the funniest like moments that I remember from last season. It was just like just stupid like NBA shenanigans of a team clearly trying to win with Orlando, and then the Raptors, a team that is clearly trying to lose in order to get better position in the draft lottery, right? And both teams like failed. Like both teams failed their assignment, and it was just so funny to see. And I don't know. It's just something that came up, and it just reminded me of that. But it was a fun game. I mean, it was a fun game being a neutral and everything, but it was just so funny watching just the nonsense being pulled off. Anyways, yeah, Raptors are an interesting case. They're a team that I'll be keeping my eye on. I don't know. They're just like a interesting mishmash of like good players, but like, is the fit going to be there? What's their identity going to be? All that kind of stuff. Yeah, just wanted to do a little, kind of some thoughts. I mean, I'll probably be like revisiting some of these as we get closer to the regular season and maybe even the preseason. But I've just been really wanting to talk basketball. Like ever since like I don't really know what like kind of like, I don't know, struck me to want to talk about it, but I would say, I don't know, just like hearing just like basketball stuff, news, that kind of thing. Finding out that the preseason is coming up has got me kind of excited. So that's kind of maybe what got me into talking about it. But yeah, just like a quick little preview of some teams. I'll probably record, who knows, maybe tomorrow or later in the week and talk more hoops. Maybe I'll give a preview on some other teams and some thoughts on them as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for now. All right, recording this on today's Wednesday, September 24th. Wanted to do another catch up. Wanted to do like another episode talking about more kind of NBA previews and that kind of thing. Maybe more like Eastern Conference stuff, because I do have like a few more teams that I want to talk about. Yesterday, I talked about teams that I found interesting, outside of kind of the obvious sort of maybe contenders or whatever. But teams that were like intriguing me, teams that I kind of considered were like, maybe I'll definitely like watch them during the regular season, because I am curious to see how they look and everything like that. But let's talk a little bit more about some of the other teams that I feel are going to be interesting slash, maybe there's some question marks. Maybe I'm just doing like an Eastern Conference preview in general. Maybe this is just what this sort of like turned out to be. But yeah, so let's start with like the top of the Eastern Conference this time around, and then kind of like work our way down, if you want to look at it that way. So let's talk about the Cavs. I think the Cavs are going to be good this year. I think that they'll be right back up there where they were last year as well. But really the big question mark is like, they've made it. They were like one of the best teams last season. Are they going to be able to kind of replicate that again? That's, that's kind of a question mark. Really the big thing though is going to be like, can their play sustain going into the playoffs, right? For, a few seasons now. Was it last year, like not this past season, but last year when they went to, was it the Eastern Conference Finals or the second round, right? They lost fairly handedly to the Celtics. And then this year, they also lost fairly handedly to the Pacers, right? I mean, you could obviously point out to Garland being injured. I think, there were some questions with like Mobley and Jared Allen also being kind of slightly injured as well. But they were going up against like the hottest team in the NBA with the Pacers, right? But like, if you were like the number one seed, there's going to be expectations for you to be able to kind of at least get to like the conference finals, right? I think a lot of people, including myself, were kind of slotting them in as the favorites to come out of the East. I mean, that was sort of like the obvious pick. The obvious pick is always like number one from the East from number one versus number one from the West. That was kind of what I was expecting. I do remember last season when the Thunder and Cavs played in the regular season. That was like an incredible game. That was probably one of the best games during last season, where it's just like, oh, this feels like a finals matchup. Like, this feels like two of the best teams in the NBA. And I really thought that was kind of where things were shaping up to be. But then, the Pacers happened, right? So now in a field where it feels like pretty open, like they can be, them and like the Knicks are the clear kind of standouts to me as like the better teams in the conference, right? I'll talk about the Knicks after this. But I do think the Cavs, like, they lost Ty Jerome and who else? Maybe some other like minor pieces, but for the most part they have their core intact, right, with their four best players. Yeah, it's all just kind of a matter of like, is Evan Mobley going to be kind of is he going to be able to kind of, be a better player this next time around? Is Darius Garland going to be able to be healthy? Like, he's had some health concerns over the last couple of seasons, right? In 24, he just was not himself at all, which I think is totally valid. And then 25, you had that, I think it was like a foot injury or something like that. Yeah, they have a good team. It's just like, are they just going to get the yips again? Are they just not going to be able to, are they going to be able to stay healthy? Like, those are kind of the questions. Donovan Mitchell is a really good player, but, and he was trying his absolute best to try to raise that team and carry that team during some moments in that Pacers series, but obviously, like, it was quite a load for him to carry. And I just think that more is going to have to be expected from the other players as well. I think the big piece, or rather like the one piece that I think has sort of continued to maybe hinder their ability to advance is Jared Allen, unfortunately. He is a really good player, but he has shown, like, across multiple series that he just gets dogged by players who play more physical than him. Even Miles Turner, who's not known as, like, an imposing physical threat on, like, the offensive or defensive glass, like, he just absolutely powered through him during that series and outplayed him at moments, which I think is kind of telling. 2 years prior to that, during the I think it was the Knicks series, when it was like Mitchell Robinson was just absolutely dominating both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. I think some of that kind of was like a residual kind of carry through to this past season as well, where he just did not look very good against pretty comparable competition, which I think is a little concerning. So this might be like a make it or break it year for Allen, and it might be worthwhile to look at what the other, what moves they can make. I would love to have Jared Allen. So, maybe it's a little too late for the Warriors because of ages and everything like that. But who knows? That would be cool to have a center on our team. So yeah, that's the Cavs. They're not like the most interesting case because they just happen to be a good team who've maintained most of their roster from the past season. It is just like a matter of like, can they actually execute in the playoffs? It feels like a similar kind of thread to the Utah Jazz in a way of a while back with the again, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Utah Jazz. Like, they were the number one seed for like a couple of those seasons, but it just never felt like they were like an actual threat. Like, nobody really had faith in them. Like, whenever people were talking about teams that were in championship contention, like, the clear number one seed was like never a part of that discussion because people just did not have that kind of respect, and really they just did not have the pedigree or the playoff success to back that up. So that seems to kind of be like an unfortunate case with Donovan Mitchell, like a player who's really good, but is just maybe hampered by performances of his maybe surrounding teammates. He's not like a number one player. He's like really good, but he just has not had, like, he hasn't been able to get past like the second round. Like, throughout his career. So I don't know if that's something that's going to continue. Are they going to be able to break through? Like this season is kind of the year to be able to do that, really, in an especially hampered Eastern Conference. Like the Cavs should absolutely take advantage of that and really be like one of the better teams in the East this season, right? So that's kind of their situation, is like, are they going to actually be able to like effectively execute and everything like that, right? Are they going to be like an actual good playoff team, is I think really what it comes down to. The other team, well, I mean, I'm going to just be talking a lot of teams in general, but the Knicks, right? You would probably slot them as like best or second best team in the East. I mean, I think they got like some good pieces again. They got Gershon Yabusele. They still have a really strong starting five. And I think they added some other pieces as well. I forgot who exactly. I'll need to go through the rosters again. But yeah, I mean, I think the big changes, head coach, bringing in Mike Brown. My concern with that is like, I remember prior to Brown getting fired, there were a lot of discussions and chatter about the fact that he wasn't utilizing his bench very well. Like there was just like this lack of executing down the stretch. And it just did not just kind of fell apart for them. Like earlier on in the season when they were like, pretty below 500 in a incredibly tough Western Conference. And then, everything kind of derailed after that. De'Aaron Fox, requesting a trade, Brown getting fired, Fox requesting a trade, all of that. But I do think that there was something there where, while Brown might be a good coach, he clearly changed the culture in Sacramento for them, from them being just the Kings to the Beam Team Kings, and having some like finally some kind of success and finally getting to the playoffs and everything like that. But I do think there was maybe some kind of deterioration from that point on. Maybe there was just this lack of adaptability from Mike Brown going into the remainder of the season. I mean, it's entirely possible that the personnel on the Kings were just not good enough. Like, that just might be the case, really. That just might be what it comes down to. But there might be something there. That feels like a bit of a question mark. I feel like why wouldn't I don't know. If I were the Knicks, like, Mike Brown would not have been the first choice. Like Taylor Jenkins was available. I don't know, I don't remember what the issues Jenkins had with Memphis. Like, I know they had moments where like it just was not working out, but they were also testing out like a new like offensive style, but that was not entirely Jenkins, like that was not his conception, right? Like that was not like his idea. So I don't know, like I mean Jenkins was like successful as a coach for the Grizzlies, who were in the playoffs for 4 straight seasons. And I felt like, just based on, I don't know, I'm not following the Grizzlies. I have no idea, but surface level, it seemed like he was a pretty good coach, right? Yeah, with Mike Brown, it's like I feel there's actually more question marks with Brown versus Jenkins. Sure, maybe Brown has a bit more of like a experience with experienced head coach and everything like that, assistant coach with the Warriors championships, whatever. But it just doesn't, I don't know, man. Like I think he's limited. I think he's pretty limited as a coach. So that's like the question. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I think the same issues that I was like voicing about Tom Thibodeau, I think some of those might also apply to Mike Brown in some instances where there's like a refusal to play some younger players, a refusal to play the better lineups when it clearly shows that having certain players in certain lineups work out way better than not having them at all. So that's kind of where, I don't know, that's like my question. Is he going to be able to actually change their offense, especially, into something more pragmatic by having Towns, shoot more threes? And, there was like a quote of Jaylen Brown, like playing off ball or something like that, where he doesn't have to be so ball dominant. It works really well for him, but I also think that there are limitations to that. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta have some levity for him when he's not like if his offense isn't working, like where else can they kind of look to supplement that? Like, he's an incredible ISO scorer, everything like that, but I do think that, especially in this like day and age, there's going to be limits to that. There's going to be limits to how far you can go by having him just be the offense by itself. So maybe Mike Brown's going to be able to kind of shake things up, but I do have some questions there. Milwaukee. Bucks are so weird, man. The Bucks are such a weird case. I really like them getting Miles Turner. The Dame, the Dame like salary dump stuff sucks. You know what I mean? I talked about that. I mean, obviously I'm happy for Dame for being able to go back to the Blazers, but it's just unfortunate that his tenure in Milwaukee didn't work out the way it did. And then the Bucks are just like eating up the rest of his contract, right? It would be great to see Giannis play in more playoff series. I think they'll be okay because they're in the East. But like outside of him and Turner, what is the rest of that roster? Like, I have no idea. It just feels like a kind of like just a hodgepodge of a bunch of players. And then you got Doc Rivers as their coach. So, I think they'll be like a good regular season team, but I'm not really expecting a ton from them. Like, it's just like they just don't have enough, really, is what it comes down to. Like, Turner might be able to offload some of the weight and responsibility for Giannis, but on both sides of the ball, like, Giannis is still going to have to do so much, and there isn't enough for him. There isn't enough on the rest of the roster that will help him out there. I really do believe that. Like, they'll be like, I think they'll probably be in like a similar position as they were last year. Maybe, I don't even know, maybe like fifth. Were they fifth last year? Yeah, they were, because they played against the Pacers, who were fourth. But I just don't really have a lot of faith in this Bucks team. They just are. It just doesn't. Like, I mean, it's cool. It's cool they got like another player to supplement Giannis and stuff. I have no idea. I just don't know who else. Like, they have like Gary Trent Jr. Like, okay, and who else? What's that one dude's name? The was it Gary Bird? What was his name? He's a white dude. He's like a shooter. He had some good moments. I forgot his name. When I see his face, I'll probably remember. But, so yeah, it's like, what even is that team? I have no idea. So they're a weird mix. They'll be in the mix because of the East, but I just don't really know what to expect from them. Miami, I don't want to talk about Miami. I don't really care about Miami. Yeah, I don't really care about Miami. The Bulls. Bulls are they are the quintessential kind of 500 play-in team outside of like what the Hawks, but the Hawks actually did something this past offseason. The Bulls are gonna be And they still have Vucevic too. I don't understand that. I don't understand what they're doing. They signed Giddey to a contract, which seems like okay, like fairly decent for their, like not like too expensive. But I don't even. What are they doing? What are the Bulls doing? That's always like the question. Every single season, it's kind of like, where are they going? What is their trajectory? Like, they probably should have tanked a long time ago, but that's not what they're doing. They did get like a fairly high draft pick in what was it? Is it Noah Traore? Or maybe that was for the Nets. Noah Esenge is the rookie they drafted. And he's like a raw talent from France. I don't know, dude. It just feels like it's just more like bull stuff. It's just there's such an interesting case study of a team where they clearly need to make a change, but they just refuse to change. They are just like the team where it's just they refuse to change. And I just think it's so fascinating to watch. I like they have some fun games. Like whenever I've like thrown them up on League Pass in the past couple of seasons, like they've had some awesome games, right? The Lakers game last year was like super fun. I remember there was like a game they had against the Raptors which went into overtime. I'm a sick crazy person because I'm watching those two teams last year. But yeah, I think they'll be a fun League Pass team, that is for sure. And I'll be checking them out because I'm just so intrigued to see like if they're going to be able to do anything at all, if any of their younger players are going to hit. I like Matas Buzelis. He's fun, but like I don't know. Like they're just such a weird team. Other teams in the Eastern Conference. I'm just going to list it out. You got Boston, you got Indiana. Those two teams are kind of like in a similar position where their best players went out with the ACL injury. I kind of talked about them like, when like I talked about the Celtics when Tatum went out and how it just kind of, changes the trajectory of this upcoming season. Like I think they'll still be a playoff team because they have enough good players, but they're not going to be, in like, championship contention or anything like that. Same with the Pacers. I think those two teams will be good, but not good enough, right? They'll survive, but they're not going to, I don't think they're going to be the best teams in the conference, obviously. Hornets, like they have like some exciting younger pieces. Is LaMelo Ball going to be healthy? That's it. That's the question, I think. Is LaMelo going to be healthy or not? And I think that's really what it comes down to. Are they going to be like a potential play-in team? If he is, I don't think they're going to be anything to really talk about. Like they're not. I don't really. I would say like out of all of the teams in the NBA last year, they were like my least watched team, probably, for good reason. And this will probably be the case for this year as well. Like I just don't have, like LaMelo might be fun to watch, maybe like highlights here and there, but outside of that, I don't have any interest. Already talked about the Heat. Well, I didn't talk about the Heat because I don't care about the Heat. Outside of that, what else am I missing? Now we kind of get into like the Wizards and who else? Who am I missing? Wizards. I'm gonna look at all the teams. Give me a second. Let me pull that up. Okay, so looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference teams, I pretty much got all of them. The only team I didn't talk about was Brooklyn. Yeah, actually, Brooklyn's going to be terrible. Brooklyn's going to be the worst team in the NBA this season. They have nobody. They have Michael Porter Jr. and others. Like I have no idea who else is on that. Like I know of players, kind of, but not really. Yeah, Brooklyn's going to be terrible. Washington's probably going to be pretty bad, but they have actual players, though. They have CJ McCollum. They have Chris Middleton. Who else? I think they have some other vets, right? So they have, like, actual NBA players. And, I think they have some nice young pieces, too, that might develop this season. So I think they'll still be bad, but at least they have something going instead of the Nets. The Nets drafted, like, 5 players in last year's draft, and we don't know any of them, like, except maybe Yegor Demin. Is it Demin? I know it's Yegor. I know his first name is Yegor. That's, like, the only guy. Everybody else, yeah. So that's that. That's the Eastern Conference preview. I might revisit and just, like, talk about some other, as we get closer to preseason, whatever. Maybe I'll do a Western Conference one. And maybe I'll talk Warriors. No, I said I won't talk about the Warriors until the Kuminga situation is resolved. So I'm going to hold off on that. But yeah, maybe I'll get into Western Conference stuff soon. Maybe even tomorrow, if I'm feeling up for it. So yeah, that's going to do it for now. Quick little preview. It was fun, man. It's fun to get back into basketball and that kind of thing. Just listening to basketball podcasts again. Just reading up on that stuff. It's fun. It feels good to kind of get back into it and kind of feeling hyped up and excited for the season again. So we're getting close, and it won't be long now until actual basketball. So that's pretty exciting. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening as always. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.